Hello and welcome. You're watching To The Point. A series of meetings brokered by Army Chief General Dalbir Singh have failed to bridge the gap between the government and angry veterans on OROP. Both late last night and again this morning, attempts were made, but they proved to be futile. Meanwhile, the hunger strikes continue, with 6 on a permanent hunger strike, 2 of whom have been taken to hospital, whilst 4 lieutenant generals and 6 major generals have now gone on a relay hunger strike. So tonight we ask, has this now become an incendiary problem where the slightest spark could create a disastrous blaze? And has the time come for the Prime Minister to intervene, take personal charge and explain why he cannot fulfill OROP as promised? That's the discussion tonight, but first, a recap of the day's key developments regarding this dispute.
For the last 10 days, those who once fought for the nation's honor have been fasting for their own honor in the heart of the capital. Soldiering on, these war veterans have been demanding the fulfillment of a promise long overdue. And today, back-channel negotiations continued to resolve the deadlock. As the government scrambles to meet its own deadline of August 28th, the number crunching is down to 3 sticking points. Caught in the impasse are serving armed forces personnel, and the army chief has emerged the mediator between bureaucrats and former soldiers. As veterans harden their stand, the BJP's ideological mentor has cracked the whip and asked the government to resolve the festering mess.
Nearly 2 years after he made the OROP promise and 15 months after his government took to the office, the Modi Sarkar is still deliberating on the nuts and bolts of just how the OROP structure should look like. As if it wasn't under pressure already, the RSS has now asked the BJP to immediately sort the issue out and clean up its mess.
For the opposition, the stalemate has been ammunition for another attack.
Modi ji has made many promises. He made a promise about one rank, one pension. I think it's about time that the Prime Minister stops making commitments and starts taking action.
Their valor and sacrifices have kept India safe. But the issue of paying back the armed forces for their bravery and commitment has been reduced to a political wrangle. With Jugal Purohit in Delhi, Bureau Report for India Today.
Welcome back. I'm now joined by former Army Chief General Ved Prakash Malik, former Navy Chief Admiral Arun Prakash, former Defence Secretary Ajay Prasad, the General Secretary of the Indian Ex-Servicemen's Movement, who will be joining us shortly, Group Captain Gandhi, and senior journalist Nitin Gokhale, who is himself the son of an ex-serviceman. General Malik, let's start with the situation at Jantar Mantar this evening. 6 officers and Jawans are on a hunger strike. 2 more have already been taken to hospital but are still refusing to eat. And then today, 4 lieutenant generals and 6 major generals have joined the relay hunger strike. And I'm told that several ex-servicemen wives have also joined the relay hunger strike. How worrying is this situation?
Karan, I feel very sad and very concerned about this whole issue. You know, I think people are not understanding that one of our greatest military value is camaraderie, the esprit de corps. When soldiers go into battles, they have the country in their mind, but they die for their comrades, for each other. And people don't seem to realize that when they are sitting on fast with others, these people are not going to give up. And particularly when they're sitting in this kind of a congregation, nobody wants to be seen to be letting down his comrades. And I think people should realize that these chaps are not going to give up. This is not the kind of, many civilians I have seen going on fast. And here these people will give up their life. I think people don't seem to realize that it's a grave situation. very grave situation. And as you said, if somebody, unfortunately, something happens, it's going to be a very sad situation. I think it's time that people realize this. Fauji is going on hunger strike in this manner. They are not going to give up, and particularly they do not want to be seen to be giving up amongst their colleagues. So this is a different kind of a situation that we face, and not the kind of, other past that people see outside. I think government must realize that.
Admiral Prakash, there's a very forceful, cogent point being made there by a former Army Chief. You're a former Navy Chief. I want to ask you whether the same applies, and I'm sure it does, to not just the Navy and the Air Force, but to all the three military services, that when officers and jawans go on a hunger strike, it's substantially different to civilians. A, because soldiers are trained to give up their lives and therefore their attitude to death is very different, and B, the atmosphere that prevails at Jantar Mantar today has elements of pride and esprit de corps which are now very obvious, and that makes it very difficult for people to back off. Would you accept that therefore we have a potentially incendiary situation on our hands?
Yes, I think incendiary is perhaps the right word to use. I completely agree with what General Malik is saying. This is an unprecedented situation. I don't think anywhere else in the world has any country treated its veterans with such disdain, bordering on contempt, that they have to go on a hunger strike. Soldiers are meant to die for their country on the battlefield. These soldiers are offering their lives in a fight against their own government. I mean, it's sad, it's distressing, it's even disgusting that we should be in the hands of a set of people who are so insensitive and inept that they can't handle an administrative issue like pensions for veterans. I shudder to think that if this country is faced with a real catastrophe like a threatened nuclear attack or even a conventional war, what this set of decision makers are going to do. It's the kind of thing. So the general spoke about esprit de corps. There is also the izzat of the soldier. That's all we have as ex-servicemen. What do we have? Our medals and our izzat. What the government has done is humiliated the veteran and taken away his izzat, and that's something that he's not going to accept lying down. And serving soldiers are watching. Their grandfathers, their fathers, their uncles are being humiliated day after day at Janpat. And if you bring a set of teenagers today to Jantar Mantar, which one of them is going to join the Indian Military Academy or the Air Force Academy or the NDA?
You're absolutely right in pointing out that this has multiple implications. I want to focus this evening first on the potential incendiary situation of people being on an indefinite hunger strike. Group Captain Gandhi, you're the General Secretary of the Indian Ex-Servicemen's Movement. Are the people on an indefinite hunger strike, and I'm talking perhaps particularly about Havildar Major Singh, who refuses to go to hospital, determined to continue till they actually die? And secondly, will your movement let it go so far?
Two issues in this. First of all, I must tell you is that Havildar Major Singh is determined so much that he had even stopped drinking water when we asked him that he needs to be evacuated. It is just because our munch does not permit, and we will not permit any damage to him or his any body organ, so we requested him to take water. He accepted our request and has started taking water, number one. Number two.
But the attitude of those people on indefinite hunger strike is that they are prepared to die if the action they want doesn't happen. I'm just trying to understand the attitude. They are determined.
There is a determination in it. They're feeling so cheated. They're feeling so dejected that 72 days and no government official has even tried to contact us.
So what you're saying is that, God forbid, if there isn't appropriate action from the government soon, you could theoretically have a death on your hands.
Yes.
That is actually what you're saying?
Yes.
And that is what the government has to face up to.
That's the government, and the responsibility will lie with the government.
Mr. Ajay Prasad, you've been Defence Secretary. How serious a situation will we have if one or more hunger strikers actually ends up dying? And you've just heard Group Captain Gandhi, who's the General Secretary of the movement, saying that is very much something that is on the cards if the government doesn't act. If you have a death, would you accept that this would not just be deeply distressing for ex-servicemen, but it would be badly shaking for the morale of serving officers and Jawans? Mr. Prasad?
Mr. Thapar, it is an extremely distressing situation at present. And God forbid if the contingency, what you just outlined, does happen, I really shudder to think of the consequences. I think the government should take absolutely urgent steps to see that that eventuality does not take place. Now, in your earlier program also, when show I had said that the matter has gone beyond what Defence Minister or the Finance Minister could negotiate with the ex-servicemen. It requires the direct intervention of the Prime Minister. Now the time has come that Prime Minister must immediately take a decision. This has gone too long, and we cannot take the consequences of prolonged hunger strike of these people. Government will be in a very, very difficult situation if that contingency arises.
Nitin Gokhale, you're a journalist who observes the government closely. You understand the workings of politicians and the Ministry of Defence in particular. Do you get the feeling this specific government actually realizes that they have an incendiary situation in the middle of Delhi and that the slightest spark could set it ablaze?
Well, yes, certainly. I think some of the people in the government are aware of the consequences. They have expressed concern. They have already told us the concern to the Prime Minister, conveyed this concern to the Prime Minister. And I'm sure the Prime Minister has been also told by concerned people about the unrest or the kind of disquiet that is there in the serving community in the three services. I keep getting feedback, and I keep getting calls, unsolicited calls and SMSs and WhatsApp messages that the Jawans and the serving officers in the serving community are completely shocked that the government can treat their ex-servicemen and their veterans like this. So I think the government has to take a quick decision either way. They have to tell the ex-servicemen that, look, we cannot give it to you right now, we will give it to you after 6 months, but they should set a date. I said this in the earlier program, Karan, you will remember, that all that it needs is a reaching out to the veterans from the highest level, and as somebody just now said, that it's beyond the Ministry of Defence and the Ministry of Finance. It is with the Prime Minister now.
Absolutely. I very much want to come to that issue, that has the time come for the Prime Minister to personally step in and take an initiative and himself explain. But let's leave that for a moment. I want first General Malik to explore another element that is embedded in the present situation, because that adds to the weight he's sitting on the Prime Minister's shoulders. I recently read an article, General Malik, by a gentleman called Avesh Shukla, a former IAS officer, who reveals that because all IAS and IFS officers retire in what's called the apex scale, they automatically get OROP. If this can happen for IAS and IFS officers who serve till 60 and don't face death naturally in the course of duty, surely it should be possible for Jawans who retire in their 30s and officers who retire in their 40s and 50s. And if it's not happening for them, then what does this tell us about the state of civil-military relations on which any democracy critically depends? What is this telling us about where civil-military relations today have reached in our country?
Karan, let me first say that, this apex group pay scales, that is applicable to the senior officers of the army also, which include the army chief, service chiefs and the army commanders. In fact, that is today causing embarrassment to people like me, and really speaking, when I speak to these people who are veterans who are sitting on strike, they look at me and they know that I am getting one rank, one pension, which they are not getting, and some of them are blaming us also for not having stood. Although this apex pay scale and all came after my retirement, it was not there when I retired. But the fact is that they are looking at us also and causing embarrassment to us. That is one aspect. I must mention that. The second aspect, what you have said, look, I have been watching the deterioration of civil-military relationship for a very long time. And I have no doubt that this manifestation, which has taken place now, or a few years ago we had on one of the chief's age, all these things, these are manifestations of deteriorating civil-military relations. Our political leaders who do not want to face up to the military leaders, and even in this particular situation also they are not prepared to talk to them directly. They want to talk to military people only through the bureaucracy. That they do not understand has caused so much of a problem. We had the recent case, ever since this Department of Ex-Servicemen came in the Ministry of Defense, people have challenged every court decision given by the Armed Forces Tribunals. They have gone to the Supreme Court. As a result, there is a huge amount of discontentment. So I am saying it again and again that it is deteriorating civil-military relations. There is a serious imbalance there. And I think the government has to realize that this cannot be permitted to carry on. They have to step in. It is the job of the political leadership to sort this out and make sure that this imbalance which has gone on and on for so many decades is corrected. So I agree with you that this is also a manifestation of a serious imbalance in the civil-military relations. It's not only about one rank, one pay, but it is also a part of the poor civil-military relations. And I think people ought to wake up to that.
Admiral Prakash, you very kindly shared with me earlier today a whole series of letters that you have written, first when you were Navy Chief, then when you were Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and finally now even after retirement, to Defence Ministers and to the Prime Minister, urging them to take urgent action in terms of the pay for these services, in terms of OROP. Do you get the feeling that you write these letters explaining to the civilians who run the country the urgent need to pay attention to service matters, but you get no response? And when you get no adequate response, what does it tell you about the so-called civilian masters of our services?
Well, it tells you quite clearly that the priorities of the politician or our civilian masters are elsewhere. They are focused purely on elections, on their political survival and such things. National security is way down. You read the BJP's election manifesto. National security comes at 72 out of 75 items. And all the items listed there, none of them has been actioned. So they are so preoccupied with elections, and unfortunately this country has elections all the time, that they are willing to neglect national security and leave it to the bureaucracy. The bureaucracy, unfortunately, is totally ignorant, with few exceptions, with honorable exceptions. The bureaucracy is ignorant of national security issues. What you are seeing today is only a symptom of the deep malaise, the neglect of national security. OROP is a serious matter, but it's only the tip of the iceberg. There is far too much wrong because the politician has abdicated his responsibility, handed it over to an uncomprehending bureaucracy. It took 25 years to buy a jet trainer. We lost 800 pilots. Why? Because the bureaucrats don't understand. We haven't bought a gun for 30 years. A submarine sank with 18 lives because we couldn't buy a new battery. You guys don't understand what's a battery, what's a submarine. So this is an abdication of the responsibility of the politician, that he's not taking decisions and he's handing them over to the bureaucrat who he understands even less. And here you see the fruits of this egregious neglect and indifference.
Mr. Ajay Prasad, I know that my guests believe that you're probably one of those few honorable exceptions in the bureaucracy, and you proved it repeatedly on my shows by the sterling, unstinting support you've given the ex-servicemen in their movement. But I want to quote to you what Mr. Ave Shukla has actually written. I'm quoting him now. He says, many years ago, the IAS contrived a sleight of hand at which we are past masters to ensure that the highest echelons of the elite civil services get the benefit of OROP. And then he adds, since every single IAS or IFS officer retires in the apex scale, this forever ensured OROP for themselves. Doesn't that one sentence corroborate the deep-seated and deeply worrying distrust that our services have developed for bureaucrats and beyond that for now civilian politicians. And I accept you're an honorable exception to this.
Thank you for your comment. But let me come back. I have read Abhay Shukla's article also. And if you remember, he also says that while the apex scale was made available to the civil services, it is also made available to the highest echelons in the armed forces. That is also there. But leave that aside for the moment. I am very concerned myself at this time that at this juncture, the civil-military relationship has dipped to an abysmal low. And this does not portend well at all for the future. OROP, as Arun Prakash very rightly said, is only a tip of the problem. The malaise goes much deeper. And if this OROP is rectified, then we are taking the first step in restoring the confidence of the civilian masters vis-a-vis the armed forces. But any further delay, any further dithering on this subject is only going to aggravate the problem, and this is something which is very unfortunate. And I don't know what once if a real crisis comes up across our borders or something, how in this milieu this relationship will survive and the task attended to. So I must say that this OROP in that context will be a first major step in restoring that confidence which existed earlier between the civilian masters and the military.
Let's, Group Captain Gandhi, focus back on OROP, because it's not just the tip of the iceberg, it's also today representative of the very sorry, sad state of civil-military relationship. Now, last night, you had meetings with Army General Sohag, who's trying to mediate and ensure that there's a solution. You've had probably meetings with him today. What sort of response is General Sohag getting from the civilian political masters of the MOD and the Prime Minister? What response is he getting from them?
First of all, I must tell you is that we are really surprised that the OROP is being delayed just only for mere 80 crore rupees. The 80 crore rupees delayed additional expenditure on which they are talking about. The total expenditure worked out by the Defence Minister is 8,300 crores, which is not disputable. Everybody is accepting it. Though they wanted to reduce it to 5,300 crores, which was not acceptable. Now the objection coming is that pension equalization, which they are trying to present to the government or to the Prime Minister, that it will be extraordinary and very high amount, which is just Defence Minister's calculated 80 crore rupees to be reduced in 4 years.
I'm going to interrupt there, because this is such an important point you're making, and it's also so shocking. You're saying to me, as the Secretary General of the ex-servicemen's movement, and therefore someone who knows and someone who's been meeting the politicians, that the difference between what they originally agreed and what they now are finding difficult to accept is just 80 crore.
See,
just 80 crore. Let me first confirm that.
Yes, let me explain to you. Yes, 80 crore. Let me explain to you. 8,300 crore has been worked out as annual outlay.
That was what the Defence Minister suggested. That's accepted.
Yes. Defence Minister also suggested that pension equalization, which they are calling it as annual increment, and which they are projecting it to the entire world as 3% annual increment per individual.
That's under the 6th Pay Commission. That costs how much?
80 crore rupees.
So the difference is just 80 crore.
80 crore rupees, and that is what is causing the delay, and that is what is not being accepted by
Nitin Gokhale, I'll accept what we're hearing from Group Captain Gandhi as a fact, although I'm sure there will be politicians who will dispute that the difference is much greater, and I've certainly heard that the difference is in fact not 80 crore but somewhere around 4,000 or 5,000 crore. But whether it's 80 crore or the higher figure of 4,000 and 5,000 crore, are either of those sums such that the Indian exchequer can't afford it? After all, in 2008, 70,000 crore was written off as farm loan waivers for farmers, and understandably, because they were a community in plight. Today, the ex-servicemen amount to a total community of somewhere around 4.3 million. If you add 5 members per family, you could be 5 times that figure. And somehow, whether it's 4,000 or 5,000 crore, it's not acceptable. Does that suggest to you that we're into a situation of miserable penny pinching that should shame any government?
Well, certainly I think the government can afford whether it's 5,000 crores or whether it's 80 crores. There's no doubt about that. Can I make a little slight departure from the point of discussion here about the figures? And can I request Group Captain Gandhi and the leaders of the ex-servicemen movement that is happening, that if that is the case of the increment being stuck, and on that point is if the negotiations are stuck, why not tell the Prime Minister, and I'm sure the Prime Minister's emissaries are reaching out to them, why not tell the Prime Minister that, look, if you're giving us 8,300 crores annually, we are willing to accept this, and after that we are willing to give you 6 months time to figure out whether you'll give us 1.5% every year increment or 3% increment. Let's talk about it later. But let's de-escalate on both sides and come to a conclusion quickly, because otherwise this rot is spreading, as I said, to the serving people, and which is not acceptable to this country.
Absolutely.
Therefore, can it not be de-escalated a little bit from both sides and get to a quick conclusion and quick solution? I think I would like to see that as a ex-serviceman's son, and for the country's good.
I'm going to take a break there, because I'm going to pick up on that idea and combine it with what General Malik and as well as Admiral Prakash suggested, that the time has come, and so did Mr. Prasad. The time has come for the Prime Minister to step in, take personal charge, personally meet the ex-serviceman, explain why he can't possibly live up to the promise he made repeatedly, perhaps even apologize for that fact, and then ask for their support for what best he can offer. That key subject would then open the window to some sort of accommodation, some sort of compromise, and that key subject is the one we tackle. Welcome back. You're watching To The Point, and we're discussing the OROP crisis facing the country this evening. General Malik, from the government's point of view, the problem is that they cannot afford the full OROP, which the Prime Minister and several ministers have repeatedly promised, which is why the government is trying to find different ways of reducing or redefining OROP so that the cost comes down and the ex-serviceman will not have it. Do you believe that we've reached a position where the time has come for the Prime Minister now to personally step forward, take charge, meet the different ex-servicemen's organization leaders, admit to them frankly and honestly that he cannot live up to his promise, perhaps even apologize for that fact, and then seek their support for whatever is the best offer he can make? Do you think we've reached a point where the PM has to do this?
Karan, I have been saying this since 15th of August, that I think a time has come that the Prime Minister himself has to get involved, because as I have seen both Defence Ministers and the Finance Minister, they have not been able to satisfy what the agitationists have been demanding. And because the situation has become now so serious that it's not a question of days, but I am worried about minutes now. And therefore, it is high time that the Prime Minister himself stepped in. He is the only one. Whatever he says, I don't know whether he is going to, how he is going to, but in the country, I think today a stage has reached where the Prime Minister himself can talk to these people and either convince them or get convinced. Whatever decision is taken, whether he apologizes or not, I am not really concerned. So that is up to him and how he handles it. He is quite a capable Prime Minister that we have seen. Therefore, but I do feel that it is up to him now to handle the situation and talk to these agitationists. Nobody in between can really work out a solution.
Admiral Prakash, not so long ago, you and two other of your Navy colleagues and an Air Force colleague wrote to the Prime Minister. I don't know whether you've actually had any response, but do you believe the time has come for Mr. Modi to personally take charge, to personally meet the top leaders of all the different ex-service movements, explain whatever is the problem the government faces, and then ask them for their support in accepting the best he can give? Do you think we've reached that point where only the PM can do it? It's now gone beyond the remit of both the Defence Minister and the Finance Minister.
As a matter of fact, we wrote to the President as the Supreme Commander of the Armed Forces, not to the Prime Minister. There was a different set of chiefs. But yes, you're right, and the General is also right, that the most bewildering aspect of this whole affair is the coyness of the government. It's obvious that there is a problem, and why not share that problem with the people who are very much part of the problem? I use intermediaries. There's no need to have go-betweens. All those people who've been agitating for 17 months or more, and talk to them and say, this is the problem, we don't have money, we can't give it now, we can give it only to so many people, give it to the Jawans, don't give it to the officers. There are 101 ways out of this imbroglio. But to keep this coy silence and keep dropping hints and saying there are mathematical obstacles and there are problems and we'll do it and we'll do it in the next 5 years, it makes no sense. You're not talking to imbeciles. You're talking to a set of people who are most worthy of your attention as the Prime Minister of India. As a smart and savvy politician, this is the time to grab this opportunity, this challenge, and make it into a great opportunity as a savvy politician. There is much that can be done at this moment by the Prime Minister stepping forward, talking directly to these people who've been sitting in distress, Jantar Mantar, and finding resolution. They are reasonable people. They will, I'm sure, there'll be a lot of give and take if required.
I want to put that to you. The last word you heard from the former Navy Chief is these are reasonable people, they are loyal to the flag, there will be give and take if required. How would ex-servicemen respond if the Prime Minister personally met all your top leaders, admitted that he made a promise, but I can't fulfill it as I made it because there are constraints, and then apologized for backing off, and finally said, please support me in the best I can offer? How would you then, as ex-servicemen, respond to that personal appeal from the PM?
As a loyal citizen and ex-serviceman of this country, I would not like Prime Minister to apologize, number one. What is bothering us is apathy of the government and the administration. 16 months and nobody has spoken to us.
Group Captain Saab, that I accept. They've wasted 16 months. But if now the PM this evening or tomorrow were to summon General Satbir Singh and Balbir Singh, yourself and all the other leaders of the made a promise, today in government I realize I can't fulfill it as I made it.
You're asking me a very difficult question.
And then if he were to say, please, I apologize for not being able to fulfill it, accept the best I can offer, how would you respond?
Okay, you are asking me a very difficult question. What I only want to reply is this: we will accept whatever he says, but the question is, what happens to the NFU which has been given to the entire central government services? They have given that when it comes to taking to central government services, every money is found from everywhere. When it comes to the armed forces, I'm sorry, you start.
So if I understand you correctly, what you're saying, because you use those words, we will accept whatever he says, but you will accept that with hurt, and that hurt will come from the fact that central government services have been treated differently to the armed services.
Yes.
So you're saying, and I'm repeating it, we'll accept what the Prime Minister asks of us because we are loyal, we wear a uniform, we would never disobey, but we'll accept with hurt and we'll make that hurt known. I want to put something to you, Mr. Ajay Prasad. Last week, when Major General Satbir Singh and Major General Balbir Singh met the Prime Minister's Principal Secretary Nripendra Mishra, they were assured that the Prime Minister would personally meet them and perhaps the other ex-servicemen this week. And the days mentioned were Monday and Tuesday. We've got to Wednesday evening. There's no meeting either planned or even talked about any longer. What message does this send out to the very ex-servicemen whose help and support you may need if you're going to get out of the hole you're in? You promise to meet them, then don't meet them, give no explanation, and yet you can't reach an accommodation unless you reach out to them.
Look, this sends a very unfortunate signal because, as we have been discussing earlier, talks at any other level, at other levels, have failed. I believe there was a meeting at the Home Minister's residence a couple of days back where the Defence Minister and SA was present and
last
they
night, in
discussed
fact,
it with
last
the
night
leaders of this movement. But again, they failed to resolve this matter. Last night, in fact. So therefore, now there is no other option but for the Prime Minister to call them and, as you said, explain to them if he has any difficulties or problems in fulfilling his commitment which he has given repeatedly.
Okay.
Or unilaterally announce the decision that he is going ahead with it. Now again, there was speculation that 28th is supposed to be the date, the anniversary of the 1965 war, which would be an appropriate date to make this announcement. We are already now on the evening of 26th. We have 48 hours. Let's hope that the Prime Minister.
Let me interrupt and say we've been through that cycle of hope before. The last time it was pegged around Independence Day, nothing happened. We just got a bland reassurance without any commitment. It's likely we'll go the same way unless something definitely changes, and it has to change in the Prime Minister's attitude.
It has been disappointing.
Nitin, let me bring you in. At the end of the day, the solution that both General Malik and Admiral Prakash were canvassing was A, for the Prime Minister to take an initiative. But you and I as journalists know he didn't take any initiative when Lalit Gate and Vyapam happened. He's not the sort of man who likes to take initiatives in these situations. And then secondly, I went further to say that maybe the Prime Minister should, when he meets the ex-serviceman, accept his mistake and apologize for having promised what he can't now fulfill. But again, you and I know as journalists, apologizing and accepting mistakes is not the Prime Minister's style, and some people say it's not even in his character. So what are the chances that the PM will step in and take an initiative?
I think the PM will take the initiative, Karan, and I think there is some mistaken rumors that are going around that a meeting was promised with the Prime Minister for the veterans. I think it was left at the level of the officials, and which is unfortunate. I think it is now, and as the General and the Admiral have said, it is for the Prime Minister to meet these people, tell them that this is the timeline that I want, and as Group Captain Gandhi has said, as loyal soldiers and loyal people in uniform and out of uniform now, they will accept a timeline, I believe, if the Prime Minister reaches out. It is for the Prime Minister to reach out, and I think this is the only solution right now that is left, because it's gone beyond anybody else. It is with the Prime Minister. He must take the initiative. I don't think he'll apologize, but he should take the initiative, and I believe that it should happen in the next 48 hours, if I'm not mistaken, and the kind of information that I'm getting.
General Malik, there was something very important that Group Captain Gandhi said. I emphasized it and he confirmed it, but I want to put it to you and ask you, how important is that particular answer? He said, if the Prime Minister asks us to accept something as loyal officers who've worn uniform and served the flag, we'll accept. But he also made it clear that we'll accept with deep hurt because we're so aware of the fact that the civilian national services have been treated differently. Taken as a whole answer, do you think that that is a possible solution? That there's an indication from Group Captain Gandhi of a favorable response, even if it's accompanied with hurt, and therefore the PM should feel confident if he reaches out, he'll get a good response, not a rebuff?
See, I totally agree with his first remark, and I'm now speaking not only because of the people who are sitting on agitation, but the entire uniform community, which is a veteran community from the armed forces, that people still have a lot of respect for their political leadership, whether they are in uniform or outside uniform. So I totally agree with what Group Captain Gandhi has said, that they will, if they have an interview, if they have a talk with the Prime Minister, they will be extremely respectful, they will listen to him, and they might agree to what he is saying. I can't speak on his behalf, on behalf of the agitators.
Let me stop you there because I'm running out of time. I want to quickly bring in Admiral Prakash on that as well. Admiral Prakash, you said that these are reasonable people and the PM should reach out to them. And you got a very reasonable response from Group Captain Gandhi, who said that as men who've worn uniform, we'll accept what the Prime Minister asks us to accept, but we'll do it and communicate the hurt with which we do it. Do you think that is sufficient assurance for the PM to reach out? Has he now got an indication that if he does reach out, he'll get a favorable response, he won't be snubbed, which is what politicians worry about? But I've only got 20 seconds for a quick answer, sir.
He should never have been in doubt that the Indian armed forces have always been loyal supporters of the state, of democracy. And our first instinct of the soldier is to be subservient to the civilian masters. There's a doubt about that.
All right.
He should have restored long ago.
I'm going to stop you there, sir. We're running out of time. I want the last word to go to Group Captain Gandhi so that you can confirm what you said and you stand by it. You really have only 10 seconds, sir. Do you confirm what you said to me and do you stand by it?
We have said that if the government is short of money, we are ready to accept bonds. That is in case government is short of money. But in case we don't want to embarrass the Prime Minister or the loyal soldiers. But the question...
No, don't go into questions. Just answer because we're out of time. Do you stand by the sort of favourable response you said you'd give if the PM approaches you? That you'll accept what he says, but you'll indicate your hurt.
If the Prime Minister says that he does not have money, then we will accept it. But the question is,
let's leave it there, sir. Let's leave it there. You said something important. Let's leave it there. Let's not spoil it by going into details.
No. The question is that it is not one word answer.
We're running out of time.
1 minute again. I will say that the question is, we do not believe that India is short of funds.
All right.
India has enough funds, so that question will not arise. But yes,
I'm going to stop you there.
We will accept it.
We will accept it if he says that.
If he says that.
All right. We'll leave it there. We will accept it if he says that. Those are very important words. Let's hope the Prime Minister is listening. And more importantly, let's hope the Prime Minister steps in, because this is truly a worrying situation, a dire and potentially incendiary situation, and he cannot afford to delay. My thanks to all my guests for joining me. And if you have been, thanks for watching. Goodbye.